Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Commander Campaign, a show where we're going to be talking about decks that are brewed using stories from different aspects of everything. So today we have Lord of the Rings. In the future, we're going to have decks from other shows, movies, books, video games, anything along those lines. But today's episode is Lord of the Rings, so let's get right to it. All right, the commander for today is Jorkadine the Prevailer. He is representing Aragorn. So he is 3 red-white for a legendary creature human warrior, first strike, and he has Metalcraft. Creatures you control get +3/+0 as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. He is a 5/4. This creature represents Aragorn in many different ways because he can lead the army into battle. If you have the resources, if you have the equipment to fight, he can lead you to battle and you will win. All right, let's take a look at some of the supporting cast. We have Gimli here, Torbrand, Thane of Redfell. 1 red for a legendary creature dwarf noble, 2/4. With the ability, if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. So if Gimli's with you, all your angry, emotional characters are going to be doing more damage because he can bring out that emotion in your army. Sorry, you just heard my table move in the background. All right, this one's a little bit of a stretch. So it's Akiri Lineslinger, who's representing Legolas. She is, red-white for a 0/3 legendary creature core soldier ally with first strike and vigilance. Akiri Lineslinger gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. It also has partner. So the reason I chose Akiri Lineslinger to represent Legolas is because there's no legendary elves in Boros. And there's one legendary archer, but I didn't think it really fit for Legolas's character. But if you look at Akiri Lineslinger, she's very nimble, she looks like she's very quick. She's vigilant, as she has vigilance, and she will always hit first with that first strike, as Legolas does countless times in the show, in the movie, in all the movies, especially in The Hobbit. I believe it was the second one where he was jumping all over barrels and such to like confuse and outrun and outsmart the enemy. So I thought Akiri Lineslinger worked pretty well here. All right, next we have a 2-card representation for Gandalf. So this is Gandalf the Grey, Mangara of Corindor, which is 1 white for a legendary creature human wizard 1/1 with the ability of tapping it and removing Mangara of Corindor and target permanent from the game. So you tap it, you can remove him as well as another permanent. That makes a lot of sense to me. Well, first of all, it's a legendary human creature, human wizard, which makes sense for Gandalf already. But the fact that he removes himself as well as another target permanent, think of it when he removes the Balrog in that epic fight in the second movie, I do want to say. And now Mangara is reborn as Mangara the Diplomat, Gandalf the White, who's 3 and a white for a legendary creature human cleric with lifelink, who's a 2/4. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. Wow, that's a mouthful. And also, whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. So you can draw a lot of cards off of Mangara the Diplomat. Very, very good card. I thought it made sense as kind of like his rebirth. He's no longer a wizard. It's very interesting. No longer a wizard here, obviously still a wizard in the movies, but I thought that was like a great rebirth, and it made a lot of sense. All right, next we have a representation of Faramir. He's represented in 2 cards as well. So we have Odric Lunarch Marshal and Odric Master Tactician. So Odric Lunarch Marshal is 3 and a white for legendary creature human soldier 3/3. At the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. And the same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. That trample can come in handy with a very specific card later on, especially when Jorkadine's powering everyone up. It could be very, very interesting. So the reason I chose Odric for Faramir is because Faramir is a leader, and obviously Odric can inspire his soldiers to fight at a more precise and accurate rate, and they can be very, very powerful because they will band together and they will all do the same thing. So I thought that made a lot of sense. Now we have Odric Master Tactician, who is 2 white for a legendary creature human soldier 3/4 with first strike. Whenever Odric Master Tactician and at least 3 other creatures attack, you choose which creatures block this combat and how those creatures block. So there's different things you can do with this. So you can attack with everybody. If you're going to kill them, you just say, okay, you don't block. Or you can make them make very, very unfavorable blocks, which is something that would be very devastating to them. Because you can take out their key creatures, something like, I don't know, a Thalia, an Evolution Sage, something that's just like really getting their game plan rolling. And you'd be like, hey, either tap it or it's going to block, and you can kill it. So I think Odric Master Tactician, very, very good in this deck because you're very, very aggressive. So next we have Eowyn, which is represented by Trin, Champion of Freedom. We're not going to be using Sylvar, Devourer of the Free, obviously, because it doesn't fall within our color identity, but Trin is 3 and a white for a legendary creature human soldier, 3/3, who partners with Sylvar, Devourer of the Free. At the beginning of your end step, if you attack this turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. So the reason I chose her for Eowyn is because Eowyn takes down the Witch King. And so therefore, she is the champion of freedom for that battle. She frees everyone around her from the tyranny of the Witch King. And I thought that worked pretty well. Moving on. We have Darien, King of Kieldor, who is a representative of Theoden, the King of Helm's Deep. So he is 4 white for a legendary creature human soldier. He's not a human lord anymore, ever since they errated it. 3/3. Whenever you're dealt damage, you may put that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens into play. So Theoden's not having any of your shit. If you attack, you're waging war, and he's going to start pushing out soldiers, and he's going to get at you. So I thought that was pretty cool. Moving on, we have our representative of Frodo Baggins, Kithian, Hero of Akros, who is a white for a legendary creature human soldier, 2/1. At the end of combat, if Kithian, Hero of Akros, and at least 2 other creatures attack this combat, exile Kithian, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. You can pay 2 and a white. Kithian gains indestructible until end of turn. We'll worry about getting Battleforged in a second, his other half. So the 2 and a white, he can gain himself indestructible. That's basically he's putting the ring on to make himself invulnerable to attacks. He's going invisible. Nothing can hurt him, except for the Nazguls, which, if you look at the Nazguls, they could probably exile you, to be honest. So give me 1 second here. So the reason I chose Kithian is because if you look at him, he looks very similar to Frodo. And also, he kind of, if he has enough support around him when he's attacking, first of all, he probably isn't attacking without much support, but then he goes away and out comes someone to protect him. Most of the time it ends up being Sam, but you can have like different soldiers that can protect him, and that's who Gideon Battleforged is to me in this deck tech. So Gideon Battleforged is the flip side, who's a planeswalker that's Gideon, who starts with 3 loyalty. And he has +2 up to one target creature an opponent controls attacks Gideon Battleforged during its controller's next turn if able. +1 until your next turn, target creature gains indestructible. Untap that creature. Give them the ring. Why not? I guess why not? I don't know why Frodo would ever do that, considering he's kind of persuaded by it, but who knows. Alright, and then 0, every Gideon can do something along these lines. Until end of turn, Gideon Battleforged becomes a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. So, yeah. Very good protector for Frodo. Now we're going to move on to our only main character who's not Boromir, who's not represented by a legendary creature. So here is our representative for Samwise Gamgee, Selfless Squire, who is 3 and a white for a creature human soldier 1/1. With Flash, whenever Selfless Squire enters the battlefield, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn. Whenever damage that would be dealt to you is prevented, put that many +1/+1 counters on Selfless Squire. He's putting everyone else before himself because he wants to protect Frodo. So I thought that made a lot of sense. Now we have Felden of the Third Path, who doesn't want to do anything by himself because this is Bilbo Baggins. He doesn't want to do any of that anymore. He's done. So, Felden is 1 red for a legendary creature human artificer 2/3 with the ability 2 and a red and tap it. Create a token that's a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Basically chose him because he's an old guy who used to do things and now he's kind of like laying back and letting other things, like these tokens that he's sending out, take care of the problems for him. He does want to keep the ring still, though. So if that artifact could be the ring, then not really, because it has to be a creature, but you know what I mean. Moving on. We're going to move on to the 9 rings that were a part of the Lord of the Rings story. So, first of all, we have Sol Ring. Everyone knows what Sol Ring does. If you're playing Commander and you don't know what Sol Ring does, what are you doing? But I'm going to read it anyway. It's 1 CMC for a artifact that you can tap to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Very, very powerful card. Most decks should run it. It just happens to work out here for the theme because rings. Now we have the baby sister of Sol Ring. We have Sisay's Ring. Add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. It's an artifact that adds 2 colorless mana to your mana pool for 4 mana. Instead of 1 mana, it's a 4 mana Sol Ring. Just another one of the rings. Very powerful. Ramp is very useful. Also, we need artifacts to turn on Jorkadin. Next, we have one of the more powerful rings. We have Ring of 3 Wishes, which is a 5 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters on it, and you can pay 5 and tap it to remove a wish counter from Ring of 3 Wishes to search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. So you can find a key piece, like one of the weapons we'll talk about later, one of your draw engines that we'll talk about later. You'll be able to find different stuff. Next, we have Ring of Valkis, which is a 2 mana or 2 colorless for an artifact equipment. With equipped creature has haste, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature if it's red. You can equip for 1. So but this card works more than some of the other rings that we're going to get to later because we have one of each color. Just because it adds that +1/+1 counter, and it can also give very key creatures haste, which is powerful when you're also giving them +3/+0 with Jorkadin. You could do a lot of work. Now we have what I consider to be the Ring of Power. We have Ring of Evos Isle, which is a 2 CMC artifact equipment. You can pay 2, an equipped creature gains hexproof until end of turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. If it's blue, that's not relevant really, and you can equip it for 1. Why do I think this is the Ring of Power? Because you can turn it on and become immune to your opponents. At least, like, immune to targeted removal. So I think that makes a lot of sense for the Ring of Power because you put it on and you become invisible. So I thought that worked. Next we have the Ring of Zathrid, which is a 2 mana artifact equipment. For 2, you may regenerate equipped creature. And at the beginning of each upkeep, you put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature if it's black. Equip for 1. Really just there for the equip nature of it. So one thing that I thought for this ring in particular, and I also think it makes sense for the Ring of Renewal, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it's a representation of the ring that is known as Nenya, which is one of the elven rings that has the ability to preserve its wearer's natural state. So it, like, if you keep regenerating, you're preserving your natural state. So I thought that made sense. Now we have another one that actually matters because it counts for white, which is our other color. So Ring of Thune. It's a 2 CMC artifact equipment. Equipped creature has vigilance, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature if it's white. Equip for 1. This is very, very good if you equip it to Jorkadin, because vigilance and first strike is ridiculous. And also, it'll get a +1/+1 counter every turn. Now all you need is reach, and you're really in business. Now we have the Ring of Colonia. So remember when we were talking about Odric, Lunarch Marshal back here? You want to give Trample to your entire team that's already getting +3/+0, and Ring of Colonia can do that because it's a 2 CMC artifact equipment with equipped creature has Trample, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. If it's green, you may equip it for 1. So the green thing doesn't really matter, but obviously giving your entire team Trample, if you can manage to get that combo going, is pretty good. It also can just be good on a key strong creature. Now we have our final ring, Ring of Renewal. So this was the other candidate to represent Nenya. But it's really only that representation in its name, because its effect doesn't really lend itself to that. So we have, it's a 5 CMC artifact with, you can tap 5 and tap it to discard a card at random from your hand and draw 2 cards. That doesn't really preserve life. It just could be one of the other rings, and that's basically what I ended up choosing it to be ultimately. But discard 1 card, draw 2. I mean, it's 5 mana, but Vorthos doesn't have a ton of options, and it's a ring, so I thought, you know, you don't really even see this card ever, so I thought it'd be pretty interesting. Let's move on to the weapons. So first we have Embercleave, which is a representation of Nersil, which is a 4 and red. It costs 4 red for a legendary artifact equipment with flash. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature you control, and when Embercleave enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. An equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has double strike and trample. Hey, there's that trample word again. Also, you can give it double strike. That also works with Odric. Very scary. You can equip it for 3. So why does this represent Narsil? Because the next card is going to represent the reforged version of this, even though it's slightly different, slightly less powerful. Well, it could be more powerful depending on the situation, but I thought that this made for a very interesting legendary artifact equipment for this deck, and I thought that it made the most sense to represent Narsil, because look at that thing. That thing is going to kill someone. Alright, let's move on to the reborn version of it, which is Blackblade Reforged. I bet you could have guessed when I said the word Reforged. So it's 2 CMC for a legendary artifact equipment that you can equip to a legendary creature for 3, equip normally for 7, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So you put this on something with trample, or you put it on something with evasion in general, you're probably going to kill them. Put it on Jorkadin especially, because, ooh, imagine Blackblade Reforged and Embercleave on Jorkadin. You're dead. You're just dead. You can't, unless, most of the time you're just dead, because you can just get right in. So very, very powerful. So that is the reborn version of Narsil, which goes by Anduril. Now, we're going to represent Gandalf's Staff with Thunderstaff. It's a 3 CMC artifact, and as long as Thunderstaff is untapped, if a creature would deal combat damage to you, prevent 1 of that damage, and you can tap 2 and tap it to give your attacking creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. So on top of Jorkadin's +3/+0, you can get an additional +1/+0, plus you also prevents some of the backlash if you attack and don't tap this. It's pretty good. Very fitting of Gandalf, because, you know, Thunder Staff works pretty well. Now we have Legolas's Bow, Viridian Longbow, which is a 1 mana artifact equipment with equipped creature has tap this creature. Wait, I'm sorry. Tap this creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player, to any target in this case. And you can equip it for 3. Very useful for taking down some key creatures, as we were talking about earlier, like Thalia, or there's a new green creature that came out. It's coming out with Jumpstart. I believe it's a 1/1. I'm not going to look at it right now, but it makes your green creatures or green spells you control are uncounterable, whatever. That's a nasty card that you'd want to take out with something like this. If you could also get Death Touch on anything, this also works insanely well. If you have Death Touch plus this, you can just ping whatever down. All right, moving on. We have Gimli's weapon, which is being represented by Darksteel Axe. This thing is not going to get destroyed. It's made by dwarves. What do you expect? It's a 1 mana artifact equipment, and Darksteel Axe is indestructible. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and you can equip it for 2. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, this thing's not getting destroyed. Maybe exiled, but not getting destroyed. Dwarven made things are built to last, and that's what this Darksteel Axe is. Plus, there's not really any other good axes, except for, I believe, Obsidian Battle Axe, but that works with warriors, and as we can see, Torbran is no warrior. And now we have Sting, aka Sword of Body and Mind. 3 CMC artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from green and from blue. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield, and that player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. You can equip it for 2. Why is this Sting? Purely the art. It's glowing blue and green. Sting glows blue. It's a fairly short sword, so I thought it was perfect. It was the only thing that I could think of that works in any way, shape, or form for Sting, and I just thought to include it here. Now we have a generic soldier's weapon, or just any random character's weapon. Hero's Blade is a 2 CMC artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it, and you can equip it for 4. So, just a very powerful, well, I shouldn't say very powerful, but a consistent equipment. Every time you play one of your heroes, they'll get this equipped to them, and they'll be a little bit more powerful. Next is Sword of the Animist, which, in my opinion, is Arwen's sword, just because the character behind it looks like Arwen, and it's a legendary artifact equipment for 2 CMC. And equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Equip for 2. So, just a very good, healthy card to make your deck run, get you more land out. Very good in aggressive decks. Also kind of works in the theme. Now we have Skeleton Key, which is, in my opinion, the way that Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli make their way to the undead lord. So it is a 1 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature has Skulk, which means it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power than it. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Equip for 2. So it's just a way to churn through your deck a little bit. Also works because they go and see the Undead King, and they have him help them. So it's pretty, it works thematically, in my opinion. Next, we just have a very powerful sword that will draw you cards. We have Sword of Fire and Ice. It's a 3 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from blue and from red. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and you draw a card. So it's a way to take little pesky creatures off the board, as well as draw you cards, which Boros has a very hard time doing. You can equip it for 2, by the way. All right, now let's get on to the soldiers that fight. In this case, it's a knight, but these are the Rohirrim, these next two creatures. So, Hero of Bladehold, 2 white for a creature human knight with Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Works very well with Jorkadin. And later on, you'll see Hero of Oxid Ridge, which does the same thing. Whenever Hero of Bladehold attacks, put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Say 3/4. I forgot. I don't know if I mentioned that before. But just a very aggressive card and a lot scarier than it seems. Really, because you stack the triggers in a way so you get the soldiers first and then you battle cry them. So you attack with Hero Bladehold, you have nothing else. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage coming at them for 4 mana. And no other creatures. That's insane. So we have Hero of Oxid Ridge now, which is 2 red for a creature human knight with haste, 4/2. It has Battle Cry as well. And whenever Hero of Oxid Ridge attacks, creatures with power 1 or less can't block this turn. So they have to block you with their important creatures. Or their more important creatures at the very least, because their 1 power creatures are unable to block. There are some board states where this just reads unblockable. Not really too much of the time, but it can completely shut out an opponent. Like a token deck, just like, you can't block me. Or you can't block with these 3 or 4 key creatures that you needed to block with in order to stay alive. Because remember, Jorkadin, very aggressive. You want to get in there. You want to take him down as quickly as possible. So now we have another draw engine. We have Saram, Senior Edificer. It is a 2 CMC. It is 1 and a white for a legendary creature, Dwarf Advisor 2/2. Whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, you draw a card. So we have plenty of equipment in this deck. You're going to be drawing through. Plus, it's a dwarf, so it works. Now we have Pure Steel Paladin, very akin to Saram, Senior Edificer. Is a white for a 2/2 creature human knight. Whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw 1 card. Insane. If you have both of them on the field, you could really churn through your deck pretty quickly because we have quite a few equipment in here. It also has Metalcraft. Equipment you control have equip 0 as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. We better control 3 or more artifacts unless we just got Vandal Blasted because we need it in order to power Jorkadin. So equip for 0, insane with cards like Embercleave, Hero's Blade if you haven't played a legendary creature, just those hefty equip costs. Even Viridian Longbow is 3 mana to equip. It's pretty crazy. So this makes them all 0. Very, very good. If you don't have a legendary creature, Black Fade Reforged, it's just nuts. Now we have Knight of the White Orchid, another staple piece in most white decks, just because it gets you mana ramp, which is what we need in order to play this game we call Commander. So it is white for a creature human knight, 2/2 with first strike. When Knight of the White Orchid comes into play, if an opponent controls more lands than you, which they probably will, you're playing Boros, let's be honest, you may search your library for a Plains card, put that into play, then shuffle your library. That says a Plains card. So you can get stuff like Mistveil Plains. You can get stuff like Sacred Foundry. If you have it, you can get Plateau. It's just... there's another one from Throne of Eldraine that I'm blanking on the name from it, but you can get any of those, and they're very, very good. Also, just the fact that you have ramp. It also comes in untapped, by the way, which is insane. Next, we have Cartographer's Hawk, or I like to call it in this deck specifically, Cartographer's Eagle. It is 1 and a white for a creature bird with flying, 2/1. And then when Cartographer's Hawk deals combat damage to a player who controls more lands than you, return it to its owner's hand. If you do, you may search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Very similar to Knight of the White Orchid, it's another way to ramp. It's a lot slower, though, and not nearly as reliable, but it does have flying, so it can get in a good amount of the time. Now we have Assemble the Legion. Given enough time, Gondor will rise. Really, really powerful. So, if you can get this out early, say you do turn 1 Soul Ring, turn 2 whatever, then turn 3 you play this will accumulate a lot of value over the game if it's not stopped. So it's 3 red-white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a muster counter on I always want to say mustard counter. Thank you, Commander's Brew. Put a mustard counter on Assemble the Legion. Then put a 1/1 red and white soldier creature token with haste onto the battlefield for each mustard counter on Assemble the Legion. This can get out of hand. If games go to around turn 10 or 11, if you can get this out in turn 3 or 4, it can be like, they have to stop this, especially when all your creatures are getting buffed by Jorkadin. They have to blow this thing up or else they're gonna lose. It's just, it makes for a ridiculous board, faster than you might think. Swords to Plowshares, generic white card, but if you think about it, Bilbo kind of went from being an adventurer to a homebody, so it kind of works. I mean, Plowshares is more like farming, whatever. I don't think Bilbo's doing much farming, but he still went from being a soldier to being something a little bit more reserved and not out there as much. So it's a white for an instant with exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. You want to kill, like, even though you're giving them pretty good amount of life, you're probably gonna, if you're taking out something very important, this could be very worth it. Like if you're taking out their Sun Titan, if you're taking out their Grave Titan, you're taking out their Ulamog, you're taking out something like that, this card really pulls its weight. And you're going to be able to get damage in anyway, so it doesn't matter that they gain the life. Next we have Outpost Siege, which is a enchantment for 3 and a red. As Outpost Siege enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. Khans, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. Dragons, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to any target. So you're most of the time you're going to choose Khans just because it's more card draw. It's conditional card draw where you have to play that card. Excuse me. You have to play that card this turn or else you're going to lose it. But it's generally very worth it. You have a lot of low CMC stuff, so you can probably play whatever you exile. Hopefully you don't flip an Embercleave and then have no ability to play it, because that would be really unfortunate. Next, we have another way to draw cards, Mentor of the Meek. It's 2 and a white for a human soldier 2/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield with power 2 or less under your control, I read that completely backwards, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. Essential in pretty much any Boros deck, because we don't have that many options for card draw. He's a human soldier. It works out perfectly. You can draw pretty quickly because you're playing a lot of creatures. Say like Assemble the Legion, you can, like on turn 6, you can pay like 3 mana and draw 3 cards. That's nutty. That's really powerful. So that's all I have in terms of notable inclusions, but I will link the deck list at the bottom of this video. Please give me feedback, and if you want to see more of these videos, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.